Hi, my name is Eva Wagner. Today we will be discussing my costume, concept, and renderings for the play The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. So let's start with some research images. On this slide, I was just really trying to get a feel for what the shapes of the time period looked like. The play was written in 1895, and so I have here some of the different corset shapes. Some things that were going on in this time that I found were that sporting had become bigger, so clothing was now more accessible for movement, and it allowed for more movement and sport type activities. Another thing that was very popular was the leg of mutton sleeves. You can see that over here. These giant poofy sleeves were very common in the 1890s. And a lot of high fashion people wore them. This slide of research images was really useful to me. These are mostly dresses that I found from the archives of the Met. Some of them came from different fashion museums, but most of them are from the Met. And this really gave me a good idea of how the different dresses might have looked and at varying levels of fancy. If you start in the bottom left-hand corner, this is a morning dress, and then as you go along the bottom row, it moves into tea dresses and afternoon dresses, and then the top row is mostly evening dresses. So this helped me to understand how the women dressed at different times during the day, and a lot of my inspiration for my costumes was pulled from this slide. This slide is geared towards the house staff of the country house and the importance of being earnest. This is Reverend Chasuble and Miss Prism. Up here you can see different pictures of governesses or reverends from the 1890s, and then below some technical elements of the shape of menswear, because we did a little bit on the shape of women's wear earlier, and this is the shape of menswear. So this slide was really helpful for me in designing Miss Prism and Dr. Chasuble, and you can see that clearly later when we talk about them. This slide includes more shapes of the menswear, and I just was really trying to get a feel for what the overall silhouette looked like and how it was unique and how it could be most accurate for the year 1895. This slide is more research on menswear. When I was researching the 1890s clothing, a lot of what came up as artifacts that were saved in museum were women's wear. However, most of the characters in this play are men, so I wanted to make sure I had enough research to back up my choices that I made with the menswear as well. Up in the top left-hand corner, this is a smoking jacket, and this is what I modeled one of ALGERNON's costumes off of. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, I watched a lecture on fashion history, and one of the big takeaways for menswear in the late 1890s was stripes was a very popular pattern. This slide includes my evocative research. I have a couple pictures of Oscar Wilde and ways that he was challenging fashion in his day and age, along with a picture of him and his lover. I have Victorian courtship, because that's what this story revolves around, is love between two couples. I included Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus to remind myself that these stories are very prevalent today. This is a modern example of a bun-burying story. I also included Stan Hewitt Gardens because much of the play takes place in the garden outside of the country home. And I included a couple different tea sets from the Victorian age, and some of them specifically from 1895, because I like tea a lot, and that means Victorian age to me. From all of that research, I was able to put together some sketches. I decided to sketch Ernest as his own character because I wanted to make it clear to the audience that Jack and Algernon are dressing up as the same person, essentially, and that will make the confusion with Gwendolen and Cecily more easily understood, because they think they're engaged to the same person. I really wanted to play with colors in this play, and because the play has underlying metaphors for homosexuality with the idea of a forbidden love really for no reason, because Ernest and Gwendolyn are not able to get married simply because Ernest/Jack doesn't know who his parents are. Even though he is a wealthy person and owns many homes, Lady Bracknell can't overlook the fact that he doesn't know who his parents are, and therefore forbids them to be engaged. This problem is solved by Ernest Jack finding out that he is part of their family, and to me that means really we're all the same, and that's something that can overcome the idea of silly barriers on love. So for that reason, I wanted to play with colors and try and incorporate all of the colors of the rainbow to symbolize the pride flag. So I chose for the Earnest character to always be wearing some kind of patterned purple. Purple is a very fun color to me. It's very out there, and the pattern adds to that. And for both Jack and Algernon, this Bunbury or Ernest character is a way for them to be out there and not necessarily follow societal conventional rules. So I wanted to give them out there clothing, kind of inspired by Oscar Wilde himself. So I put him in a vertical striped purple jacket, and then in Act 2 he is in his mourning clothes, so obviously I dressed him in all black. I wanted to make this very somber, so I gave him a long coat, and he had just been traveling back, so I gave him hat and gloves for that as well. And then in Act 3, when Jack is Jack in his country home and he has changed out of his mourning clothes, I put him in green because this is a contrasting color to purple, and it really shows that 180 switch between his Earnest character, which can go out and have fun, and his Jack character, who is this father type figure who is in charge of Cecily. For Algernon and Cecily, I chose to dress them in pinks and maroons. For Algernon, this symbolized to me that his real Algernon character is a little bit closer to his Bunbury or Ernest character. It's a little bit closer than Jack's is to Ernest. Algernon also likes to have fun. And then for Cecily, the pink symbolized her innocence. She's the youngest character, and she spends a lot of her time fantasizing about romance and writing in her diary about it. So to me, this meant a innocent, youthful pink. I put Algernon in a smoking jacket for Act 1 because he's in his home, he's where he is comfortable, and Jack is coming to visit him. And then for his patterned purple, I modeled it off of this suit that I saw this gentleman wearing in a fashion ad, and instead of black squares on it, I made it purple, and then I established the purple more with the pockets and the collar. And because he's wearing this costume at the end of the show, I still wanted to give him that tie to Cecily to make the romantic relationship clear to the audience, so I gave him pink accents in with his brown suit. Gwendolen's color scheme was based off of her relationship with Jack and the tie into that, and also her quick relationship with Cecily. It really spoke to me as an older sister type. They became fast friends and then quickly were fighting and then quickly sided with each other again, and that sounds like a sisterly relationship to me, and so she seemed like the cooler older sister, so I wanted to dress her in cool tones like blues and then give her some green to tie into Jack. So at the beginning she is in a dinner dress because she's coming over to ALGERNON's house to be proposed to and have dinner. I was really heavily inspired by this dress from the Met Digital Archives and nearly did it exactly. The only change I gave her was a white shirt to break up the blue, and I gave her some white gloves and a hat because she had traveled and she was very formal. And then for her Act 2 and 3 clothing, again, I gave her the green to give her a tie-in to Jack, and her traveling clothes are a bit more easily movable, and like I had talked about earlier, they allowed for sports better and movement better. Again, this one was modeled off of this tea time dress from the Met Digital Archives. Lady Bracknell's character is very loud and unapologetic, so I wanted to dress her in yellows and oranges because orange is the color that is most quickly noticed by the human eye. That's why all signs are orange and yellow. So I wanted that to capture her character desire to be noticed and heard. I gave her a massive evening dress for the first scene because she is out there and opinionated and big, and why would she not wear the biggest dress in the room that she could just to go to dinner with her nephew? And then for her travel wear, I toned it down a little bit, but she still has the widest skirt and the biggest leg of mutton sleeves out of any of the ladies. I also gave her eccentric hats because that goes along with the showmanship. And finally, for Reverend Chasuble and Miss Prism, these are the characters that are seen working. They're at their jobs, they live here, they're the house staff, but they're still tied together and romantically involved. So I wanted to dress them similarly, so I gave them both grays and blacks to exemplify this professionalism. Chasuble, I established him as being a reverend by the collar of his shirt. This is very typical of holy men to be wearing. And then Miss Prism, I gave her a couple different accents of color. The green is to tie her to Jack, and the yellow is to tie her to Lady Bracknell, because Lady Bracknell is the one who recognizes her and she is Jack's mother. So I wanted to hint at these ties throughout the play. So for this project as a whole, I really wanted to stick with the historical accuracy of the shapes of the costumes and the styles, and I really wanted to be as close as I could to the shapes and styles that were present in 1895 when this play was written. However, this play has so much meaning in it of being a unit and being all together, and love being something that will work out in the end or should work out in the end, and that the fact that our unity can lead to love working out, and that silly barriers such as loving someone of the same gender or loving someone who is an orphan, I think these are clear metaphors that Wilde wrote into the play because it was something that he was experiencing himself. And all of these can be solved by looking at the fact that we're all people, we're all similar, and I wanted to exemplify that with the costumes, and that's why I went with such bold colors, and that's why I played with the colors more than was typical of the time period. I'm aware that the time period was able to create pretty much any color that they wanted to, but they typically went towards more subdued colors or just darker colors in general, but I wanted most of the colors to be bold, so that they could really exemplify the pride flag, as I mentioned earlier. This concludes my presentation on my costume choices for The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. Thank you.